Okay, it's a short meeting, so we'll go ahead and get started. Just so you know, we are recording this session. And let me just start by saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening to whoever is here. Thank you for joining us. We have 4 items on the agenda for today, so we'll start with a sneak preview of the new SIGCHI website, and we would appreciate everyone's feedback. So that would be Abhinav, who's our web chair, and then we have updates about the SIGCHI Development Fund. You would also have seen an email go out about this, so that will be from Naveena Karusala, who is our community support chair. Then Pageman, as VP Pubs, will talk about changes to our appeals process. And finally, Katya, who's our volunteer support chair, will be talking about our volunteering handbook and other resources around volunteers. So with that, let me just ask Abhinav to get started. And Abhinav, I'll give you screen sharing permission. So 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Making you a co-host actually, so go ahead.
All right, awesome. Thank you. I will go ahead and get started as quickly as possible. All right, let me share my screen. All right, so I don't think I need to preface this time, but we have had issues with our current website right now, and it's been going on for a while. There's been the malware attacks. There's been a lot of WordPress and plugin dependency, and I know it's been crazy this time. And it's sad that a lot of our debugging happens on the front page of our website right now, which is not great. So what we're trying to do is we have our 400+ page current WordPress website, and we're trying to move to a redesigned website. The redesigned website is going to have most of the pages that we have in the SIGCHI navigation, and we're trying to maintain the same URLs. And the rest of the sub pages that we're still trying to move over slowly will live on, say, a subdomain like archive.sigchi.org. So I'm just like setting the stage here that this is sort of like the V1. And this is some things will work on this website right now, and this is sort of like a work in progress, but we're trying to move over from WordPress as soon as possible so that we can like have a much more stable version live. So yeah, all right. All right, so quick walkthrough on our progress right now. We've built a custom theme for the website. It doesn't come with any plugin dependencies. The data from the website comes from our own personal SIGCHI CMS. It is responsive for phones and tablets. And if some of you will notice, like the page load performance and everything is going to be much better. And so without taking any more time, I'll show you how the work in progress website looks like. It's a simple layout right now, but everything's powered through a CMS. And you can see all the navigation at the top, a quick layout of all the conferences that we have under SIGCHI. We have
sharing slides and not your screen, so we're still in
really?
slide. Yep.
Oh, thanks. Oh, wait. I thought I was sharing my entire desktop. Is it visible now?
Yeah, now it is.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so navigation at the top, simple V1, some slides. We can change the photos later. There's sort of like the base structure that we have right now. We have a list of conferences, members, publications, all the conferences that we have under SIGCHI, a space for upcoming events, and a space for our blog posts as well. And what the whole custom template thing allows us to do is basically it allows us to have more interactive components on our website. So for example, if you want to go to a chapters page, we have an interactive map that we can showcase in our chapters. People can look at where our chapters are based in terms of location, search them up. So have like a more interactive look and feel that's like synonymous, like it's not just a plugin that we're copying pasting, it's something that we've built out. And all the content here will be populated through a CMS. So I'll just talk about how we can set up the content that goes in the website. And yeah, you have your about pages and your blog pages that are all set up right now. So And this is how it would look like on mobile phones with like the navigation and everything. You may also like go and look out the EC page. I picked up these photos from Slack, so please let me know if I need to change these. And you have an all committees page too. This is still data that's still being populated right now. So we're still working on filling out all the content, but that's how it's working. And yeah, how do we edit content here now? So we are using Contentful to push all the data on the website right now. And why that's better is because it's all structured content, and you can also assign roles for editors. So let me just show that very quickly too. So if say you want to add a blog post, you can just go here in this part of the content and add a blog post. If you want to add information about a chapter, you can do that in this section. Information about committees. So the content is very structured. And what that also allows us to do is say you want to add an entry and you want to add a new chapter, for example. What we can do is like we can define the structure of the website. So it's not just any content that you can add. You need to have a title. You need to have certain information about the chapter in order to add it to the website. So, and you can also assign people to roles. So only a certain amount of people can like access the chapters page or edit the chapters page. And yeah, it basically just structures the whole thing a lot better. And you can also create your own custom pages by like having like an area for just defining a custom page, and you have the rich content editor to add images, add headings. So we ensure that the same functionality is all there, but it's just more structured. And in terms of debugging too, I have Netlify, and what that does is it allows us some version control on the website. It makes sure that we do not publish errors if there is an error in the build, and it's very easy to debug too. So if you can see this, like this is how like all the changes on the website look like. So there's like a form of version control here. And if something, for example, doesn't work with the website, it just won't publish on the website, but it's something we can still see at the back end. So yeah, basically our website won't crash as much in like simpler terms. And finally, the next steps and where we are is that we do have a custom responsive template right now. We have a CMS that's connected, and we have a deployment set up too. We're just populating content from our current website to the new website right now. A lot of it is done. A lot of it is in process. We're just building out some of the static info pages too. And then finally, before publishing V1, once all this content is in there, and we're also ensuring everything is screen reader compatible right now. So once everything is added, we'll do a quick check on if everything's working for screen readers, and then publish the V1 and then start working on V2. So that's like a quick rundown of everything that's happening here.
Thank you so much, Abhinav. I know that it has taken a long time to get to this point and that it has not been an easy project. And I'm sure that everyone here knows that we've been having lots of struggles with our current website, especially with the new malware. There is a question about the accessibility. So do you want to speak to that? I think you already did, but
yeah. Yeah, so again, like we're populating all the contents, we're already making sure everything is screen reader compatible. And we'll not only like the current accessibility that our website supports, like the text toggling and the contrast, we'll definitely add much more elements there. So like not to worry about accessibility, we'll make sure all the checks are in place for accessibility, and we're adding more functionality in that aspect too. So
and we can probably reach out to the accessibility committee as well,
yes.
and have them take a look before it goes live. So, yeah. Any other questions? Any other feedback? Feel free to just share your thoughts in the chat. We can move on to our next item. Okay, so thank you, Abhinav, again. And next up, we have, let me see, it's Naveena.
Great, thanks. Let me just share my slide.
I think I need to, okay, great.
Okay. So yes, this will be updates about the SIGCHI Development Fund, as well as the Futuring SIGCHI Committee projects that have just been launched. So to start with, the SIGCHI Development Fund, one big update is that it will be integrating with our fund for conferences, what was called the Specialized Conferences Development Fund. And so this would make the SDF the sole portal for all of our grant types. So this would be specialized conferences for chapters, for sustainability activities, and for other community events. And this was a streamlining that was envisioned with all EC members and also presented to the Council of Steering Committee Chairs, and then implemented. And the SDF will continue to have dedicated budgets for each of these and dedicated reviewers. So for example, the VP conferences will still review the specialized conferences grants, VP chapters reviews chapters, and so on. And the ultimate goal of this was to increase navigability of the grant program. So consolidating makes it easier to figure out, what are the options that are available, and makes it easier on our side to make sure that key updates like this one reach everybody. And ultimately also helps make the review process more transparent and equitable, given that it makes it easier to understand amongst reviewers where limited funds are going, and also ensures that it's clear what how all of these grants are being reviewed, and also ensures consistent reviews, given that they're all subject to similar review guidelines. And our next big update to the SDF is guidelines for the overall organization of events and initiatives. And so the ultimate goal of this is to support and recognize applicants' efforts towards more inclusive events and initiatives, especially along the dimensions that align with EC priorities of accessibility, safety, sustainability, global participation, equity, and hybrid participation. And you can visit the bit.ly link at the bottom of the slide to take a look at the guidelines. And in general, they're meant to be generative and not prescriptive. And so when we review, we'll be trying to understand like what makes sense for your particular event. Also recognizing that sometimes a workshop, for example, is part of a larger conference, and the workshop organizers, for example, might not have all control over all the aspects of the event. And overall, it is encouraged to expand as much as possible on an alignment with the guidelines, but overall, we will not be requiring alignment for funding. And at this stage, we'll be collecting feedback, through the proposals and outside of them as well, and then iterating on the guidelines based on community feedback. And then moving on to updates on the Futuring Committee. So this committee supports early career professionals and students in working on pilot projects that expand opportunities within the HCI community. So one major project that has been launched is the Emerging Scholars event. And the ultimate goal of this project is to reduce barriers to SIGCHI conference participation. And they'll be starting with an Emerging Scholars event at CSCW this year, with the idea of creating a space somewhat like a doctoral consortium, but much earlier on much earlier on in the career stage to discuss research interests and build personal connections that can hopefully last throughout their research journey. And overall, the team will be looking at impacts on students, for example, their motivation, what they got out of it, their desire to host such an event themselves, and also sharing and writing up lessons learned for future events that could be integrated into conferences. Our second project is on diversifying knowledge formats. And the goal here is to support production and use of diverse knowledge formats to increase relevance and use of HCI knowledge. So this could be among, for example, practitioners, or it could be among community activists or community research partners, and going beyond the often text-based formats or even pictorial formats that are common. And outputs of this project will include community discussion and feedback around diversifying knowledge formats and creating more opportunities to experiment with knowledge formats, a workshop that will collect best practices in producing and using these diverse formats, and then creating a repository containing these best practices for dissemination. And then finally, our third project is on increasing global HCI awareness, so demonstrating the value of HCI globally with the intent of strengthening support for HCI programs and education in contexts across the world. And one major output will be a podcast series interviewing researchers and community builders in the Global South. And then ultimately creating a website with curriculum drawing on these interviews, for example, case studies of the kinds of research that's happening and that could be integrated into HCI curriculums. Thank you, and I'm happy to, I think there's a question in the chat or a comment. Oh, no, okay, never mind, that was from the previous one.
Yeah. So Naveena, I actually wanted to give just a quick feedback on the very last Futuring project. So Chat and also Duncan might be good people to talk with. Chat because he's leading the Asia Committee, and Duncan who's leading the Education Committee, because they've been talking about aligned goals. So your third Futuring team could chat with them. And then I see that Chat has the suggestions. So number one being replacing bullet points with numbers. That actually makes a lot of sense because it will be easier to refer to them. So yes, and then second is make it clear in a simpler language that it is desirable but not required. And thank you, Keith, for sharing that link. Anything else that anyone would like to add on either the Futuring projects or the SDF changes? So I wanted to just reiterate that with regards to the guidelines, our goal is to keep the next 3 months basically a period for feedback. So we are soliciting feedback. We want people to give us feedback at the language level, but also at the level of just what the content is of these guidelines. And then in 3 months, we will be updating both the blog post as well as the submittable site with the list. So do take a look and send in your feedback. And Naveena, if you want to drop the email for SIGCHI for All in the chat, then people can reach out if they have any feedback. Anything else before we move on to VP Pubs? Okay, Pageman, over to you.
Oh, yeah, thank you everyone for being here. I'm gonna provide a quick update on the proposed changes that we are making to the appeal process, and a little bit of a background before we kind of see the changes. So there are a number of reasons that we decided or needed actually to make some changes, mostly to be more aligned with ACM, basically publication policies, as well as in the kind of a current process, there are a couple of functions that doesn't exist anymore within SIGCHI, so we needed to update that. We had a meeting, I think a couple of months ago, where Susanna proposed some of the changes and we discussed them. And then I took over, basically I volunteered myself to work with the SIGCHI Publication Committee to finalize the wording for these updates. So today I'm presenting the new wording. The next, I'm not asking for any vote at this stage. So if you are all happy with the wording, I'm gonna make sure that ACM, basically publication director, is okay with the changes we are making, and then I bring it back for the EC to vote. So today's is mostly for feedback from the EC member and the community members that are here. Any question before I start? Are we good? Cool. So I'm sharing my screen now. You should be able to see. And I made this slide hoping that it makes things easier to basically compare. So if you go on our website, there is a page under our conferences policies that talks about submission and review. It's a long page. As part of that page, it talks about the appeal process. And that's the bit that's I highlighted on the left side. So there are a couple of, as I said, this is relatively old. I think last time it was updated was in 2019 or 2018. Stuff has changed since then. Particularly, there are a bunch of functions that doesn't exist anymore. For example, the conference board, we don't have it anymore. And then there is also, we wanted to make it more clear. So basically, our publication, we don't really own them. It's basically ACM publication. So we needed better alignment with ACM's publication policy. So what we have on the right, particularly the red bits, are updated text to what we had on the left. The couple of key changes here. So in the past, we had the rebuttal. So stage one, as you see, the rebuttal process was included in the appeal. That's not necessarily true, I think, because the rebuttal process is still part of a review process. So we basically made that into the explanation of that. So we basically say that conferences have revised and resubmit or rebuttal process, which intend to allow authors to flag factual error. And the appeal process is going to actually focus on the actual appeal process. The first 4 stages are very similar to what we currently have. Stage 1 is to appeal to the associate chair who is handling the paper. Stage 2 is to appeal to the chair of the subcommittee, and stage 3 would be the track chair. So if you want to bring an example from, for example, as a CHI process, so this would be the AC under the subcommittee and the chair of the subcommittee, and then the track chair, which would be basically the paper chair. Again, we also highlight here that not all our conferences have all these stages. So if you're looking at like a specialized conference, we probably won't have a subcommittee chair, and then the track chair would be the paper chair or work in progress chair or panel chair, whatever chair that might be, that looks at the submission. After that, it's a technical program chair or program chair, depending how different conferences word that. And then I think the big changes here is after the TPC, the appeal would go directly to ACM publication board. So we are removing the conference steering committee and the SIGCHI conference board. And this is to be aligned with the ACM policy. Basically, the way ACM sees it is that the technical program chair in each conference is the person or the team who are actually responsible for publication, not the general chair or not the steering committee or not the EC. So those roles don't really have any say in the publication process. So we are basically removing those, and then after the TPC, it goes directly to ACM publication board, and after that, it would be ACM director of publication. So it's basically, as I said, aligning our process with what ACM expects, and providing a clear stage for the authors in case they need to appeal the outcome of their paper. So, as I said, this is the kind of a current update. I see there are a couple of questions in the chat, so I thought I'm going to go through them and try to answer. Yeah, feel free to add more to the chat and I answer them.
So
okay,
Jim
time to allow for this.
has a bunch of questions. I'm wondering, Jim, if you
Yeah.
want to just say them out loud or.
Yeah, thanks. I can't figure out how to raise my hand, so thank you for just, yeah. I have probably been rejected on appeals by a third of the people in the room, so I just wanted to say thank you for revising this. And if I haven't been rejected by you yet and you're in the room, then I look forward to be rejected by you in the future. But I guess I have a lot of experience with the appeals process. I appreciate the effort to clarify it. I think a lot of the time people in this chain are actually not aware that the appeals process works, so or that it even exists. And I've appealed things at CHI where I'm sure folks very high up in the chain, I had to kind of educate them on the fact that this policy was even in existence. So I think a lot of my issues are maybe not as much about the policy itself, but maybe the implementation or thinking about how it ends up being implemented. And so the first point I raised was really just about the time. And so the most common response I've had to appeals is, yeah, we kind of agree with you, but we can't go back and assign new reviewers right now. So you have to resubmit the paper next year. And so I don't know if there's a place for that to go into the policy, but I don't think that's an appropriate response from the conference organizers. And I think that there should be repercussions or something put in place so that that's not allowed. The other issue I've had is that quite often conferences are kind of a tight-knit community at the top, and one of the people at, say, stage 2 might have a conflict of interest with people at stage 1, and they've co-authored together. I've had this happen where they co-authored within the last year or so, and so they didn't have to declare that kind of conflict of interest. In a lot of ways, it's not their fault because they weren't asked to volunteer. Like the people who asked them to volunteer might not even consider that this was a constraint when they were assembling the team. But the conflict of interest stuff is probably also good to clarify, because I don't think it's clear whether or not that applies to this process or not. And then the other one is just the confidentiality of this. So are these considered confidential? I've had issues with the ACM policy on, so in theory, submissions are confidential, right? To quote the policy, you can't disclose the existence or the status of a submission. Those are the words, existence or status. I've had those kinds of things disclosed by people in the review process. And there's really no repercussion even through this appeals process, but is the appeal itself confidential or not? At what point is confidentiality broken? So I guess these are all things that, oh, sorry, Kata. So the COI issue was that I appealed the decision. The associate chair, it was at CSCW, so I forget the titles they're using. So I think it was the papers chair was in conflict with the editor because they had co-authored a paper before. And so I felt that it was unlikely that they were going to overrule a decision by them at a lower level.
Yeah, so maybe I can provide a quick answer to those, Jim. So I totally agree that collectively we all need to do better in terms of how we handle appeal. This particular change, we are focusing on updating the stages that's not basically aligned with the ACM. I could see a benefit of us making some form of a longer description in terms of how to handle appeal and then share that with our volunteers. So that's something that we should be working on and we will work on. Particularly like the conflict of interest that would be that I assume that would apply to all the aspects of the conduct that we do. So that should be there, as well as and then as well as the confidentiality, as you mentioned. It's there. One of the reasons that we are actually removing the publication board and then the steering committee is that to keep the process more confidential, and it goes from the TPC to publication to ACM publication board and ACM director of publication. So that's basically involving less people in that process. That's actually not needed, because if you are looking at ACM policies, they basically talk about the program chairs as the people who are responsible for decisions on the paper, and then the general chair or steering committee, they are mostly responsible for the experience of those of the conferences. So hopefully these changes gonna improve the experience. But I totally agree with other points that you highlighted, and I will work with the colleagues to write a guideline on how to handle these appeal processes. As part of the ACM publication policy, all conferences should have these as part of their CFP out there, so authors should be able to see these as they submit their paper.
Thanks for that. Can I ask one other quick question, which is more informational? I've asked about success rates and that in the past, and the response I've gotten is that it's confidential. And so I was just wondering if SIGCHI might consider collecting appeals data across conferences so that we could have a better idea. Like, I would just love to know how many appeals are filed. Are any successful? I've never had one successful, and I filed quite a few. So I would just love to know what the process looks like.
Yeah, so we have that at stage 4 that the TPC should inform SIGCHI Executive Committee in terms of the appeals that they receive and the decision they make. And that's one of the intention for that, is that we would have some form of a record of the number of appeals that are submitted across our conferences, and that could kind of help us to improve our implementation of the policies. And just to kind of highlight again, so the SIGCHI EC won't have any power in terms of deciding on any of the appeal, same as the steering committee, same as general chair. So these are basically people who should not be decision maker in terms of the outcome of the appeal. The way I could also see it, and I think this needs to be more better clear, is where we are looking at kind of a procedural error and where we are looking at significance of contribution. And that's something we need to, as we provide the guide, we need to clarify that for example, you're not going to go to a publication board and arguing about the significance of a paper, but at that stage, it would be mostly policy violation that they would potentially care about. And then at the AC and the subcommittee chair, that's where, if there is an issue with the review, basically quality or review process, that should be dealt with. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I guess one of the things to also consider is that by the time you have an appeal up to the director of publications, that could be months. Like, I think that, I've had 6 to 8 months between step 1 and step 6. And so I don't know what the expected outcome is at that point. I think that could be more clear. Should the director of publications be able to say, no, you need to accept that paper now? And the proceedings folks have already probably pushed it to the digital library at that point, right? Like, so I guess my sense is that there's a big system that people are trying to work within, and usually authors they're kind of powerless, and people are, I think a lot of the people in the system itself don't have a lot of room to make things happen, just because of the timelines of conferences. So I guess I think the intention here is very good, but the execution we really struggle with. So anyway, I've been talking a lot. I thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Well, thank you.
As Benjamin said, that this is as much about the process as it is about the content, right? So that is something for us to ensure. And this also speaks to William's point. So William, do you want to unmute yourself? Or I can read what you brought on.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Wow. Yes, we had a very traumatic experience. Ultimately with a successful appeal, but the initial rounds of rejection did not include any option to appeal whatsoever. There was no information about a next stage and things. And we ended up going extraordinarily around the process and saying, this is just not right. And we appealed on our own, I suppose, to some well-known people in the CHI community. And they put pressure on people in the process, and then later we were accused of launching a scurrilous attack against the people in the CHI community, and that's simply not our intention. We simply we're not informed of any option to appeal. And so whatever else we can say in this process, there should always be, okay, we think that we have rejected your paper or your appeal or whatever, but the next stage is this. And that was not the case with us. And I have documented email messages to prove that. And that's just not the way it should be.
Yeah. So I think as also I mentioned, so there are more work that we need to do in better supporting on conference volunteers, and that's something that the SIGCHI Publication Committee has started. So if you are involved in conference organization, our team just reach out to all the publication chairs and all the TPC, offering them support, because while some of these policies exist and some of those guidelines are there, not all the volunteers are familiar with these or read them. So we decided to kind of change, and then we now reach out to them and ask them to basically come and talk to us, and then send them relevant links. So many of the issues that unfortunately authors or colleagues experience is not the absence of the policies of guidelines, is like unfamiliarity sometimes. So while we are trying to make this more clear and more explicit, we are also working with all volunteers to be able to inform them of these policies and support them in their process.
Thank you, Pejman, and I'm glad about the final outcome of your appeal, William. But thank you for joining us here.
Oh, thank you all. And if you have any other feedback, or if for people who are watching this later, feel free to email me. My email address is on SIGCHI EC list, and it's a vppub@sigchi.org, I guess. And if you have any feedback or comments, please feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy to discuss those.
Thank you, Pejman. And moving on then, last up we have Katya, who's going to talk about volunteering.
Yeah, I will be super quick since time is already running out. So let me share. I have a couple of slides, but I will be really, really quick. And then if you have any question, of course, you can ask me. Okay. So this is just a really quick update since we are working to refine the new volunteer handbook. Actually, we already have one, but since it's really important to refine it, consolidate it, and make clear what is important for us as a community and for people that are volunteering with us, since we are all volunteer here, is important to try to refine it. And then we are also formulating the volunteer we call articulation. Actually, we already have one of that one too, but also in this case, we will make more, let's say, interactive online. But yeah, I will explain you a bit more. So here you can see a picture why I use this picture, because I think it's really important to think about our role as a volunteer. It's true, we have a lot of responsibility. We have a lot of principles that we have to think about it, but sometimes we have also to think that we have a lot of right. So the new volunteer handbook would like to emphasize that. So if you feel that something is not okay, or if you feel that you are some burnout because you are working too much, or you have trouble to reach your, let's say, committee chair or something like that, it's really important that you know what you can do and you're right about it. So it will be not just about role, responsibility, principle, the structure of SIGCHI and the CM, but it will be really also about your right as a volunteer. So I try here to structure what is that, because maybe someone say, why we need another handbook? We already have the membership one. This is different. You are already a volunteer, so you have to know something more. It's not just about being a member, it's about being active inside the community. And then why we need it, as I told you, is really because you have to know that you can have issue, and it's important to know you're right about it. So it's an honor, it's a responsibility. There are a lot of benefits to become a volunteer with us, but still remember that you have a lot of right. Why I need it? If you're a volunteer, you need it for sure. And this one is really related to the volunteer articulation. Why? Because it's a way to formalize your commitment with the community. We have something that is just written, so it's just text-based. We want to make a form to make sure that when you are completing it, you're filling it, you know why you are here, your commitment, your role, who is the people who you have to report if something need to be clarified or something similar, which is your responsibility. And there are also some statements. Basically, we will create a form, and when you are filling it, you will say, yes, I know, I read the handbook, for example, I know the code of conduct of ACM. So we are expecting that when you say yes, you know about all these really important regulations that are behind SIGCHI, but not only, but also ACM. So that is another important document. We are working on it, and we will make it soon available as online form. Of course, if you are becoming a new member, you will need to fill it. New volunteer, not just a member. And finally, just to really quick conclude it, it was not in the list, but remember, the open call is still open. I put here, as usual, it will be open forever. I put here the QR code, so if you need just to send also to, I don't know, your PhD student, other people that you know, is here. And we have some active committee that are recruiting. So for example, there's a SIGCHI committee and the education committee. So if you know people that can be a perfect fit for this committee, please send a link and ask them to apply. Super quick, maybe too much. So if you have any question, just ask me, I will be able to answer.
Thank you, Katya. Any questions? Any questions about Katya's slides? Any questions in general? I see that there's a discussion happening about conflict of interest, and that's something that we have a policy on, and that Katya is working on as well to revise that policy. So we'll probably come back and discuss that with you all soon. But if there's nothing else, then I think we can go ahead and say goodbye. Thank you for joining. I think this was a good discussion that we had, especially about the appeals process, but also the others. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Okay, I will stop recording now.